Hi, everyone. I know we're going to go live in just a minute or so. So just bear with me for those of you that are joining. We'll give everybody an opportunity to kind of get settled in, and then we'll start our webinar or our web class today shortly. Hi, everyone. We're going to kick off our web class today, Mastering Vendor Risk Assessments, Meeting FTC and IRS Mandates. Welcome. I'm Michelle Novak, founder of Cardinal Byte, cybersecurity risk and compliance company. A little bit about myself. I have over 30 years experience in risk governance and audit experience. We're here today to protect your EFIN and your firm's reputation. Most firms focus on their own password, but they ignore the back door where their vendors sit. Today, we're going to master vendor risk. Think of your firm like a house. You can have the best locks on the front door, your password, but if you give a key to a contractor who leaves your back door window wide open, your house isn't secure. It's in the eyes of the FTC and the IRS, your vendors are your responsibility. And that change happened last year. So we're here to teach you today the simple steps that you can take to help build and learn how to conduct a vendor risk assessment for your company. Before we begin today, I'm going to ask everybody who is joining, please keep your self on mute. We will answer all questions at the end of this web class. And please keep your video on. We love to see your faces. Without any further ado, let's begin. So, we are the bridge between legal talk and accountant reality. Most security advice is too technical. Cardinal Bytes tries to simplify that for you. At Cardinal Bytes, we know you aren't IT experts. You're tax and compliance experts. Our mission is to provide the blueprint. We take these massive federal mandates and turn them into a one-page checklist for you. We make sure that if an auditor knocks, you have the right folder ready to hand you. And that's what we're going to do today. So if you use a tool, make sure that you're taking notes. If not, be sure that you're taking notes because we're going to go over a lot of information today that will be useful and will actually give you step-by-steps on things that you can do immediately to try to help you. The law was changed last year. You're now legally considered a financial institution. The FTC safeguard rule was updated to include anyone significantly engaged in financial activities, and that means you. If you don't vet your vendors, you're in direct violation of federal law, even if you haven't been breached yet. If you've looked at question 11 on your IRS W-12 form, when you check that box, you're saying you have a security plan. You are testifying that you are also have oversight compliance onto your vendors. If you check that box and you don't, essentially you're committing perjury. And we're here to help you today to understand that, right? If you take a look at it, even the IRS, for all tax professionals, you're required now to make sure that you have a WISP, or a written information security plan. That goes hand in hand, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. Vendors are the number one way hackers get into small firms. Hackers don't attack you directly. They attack the software that you use. They hop into your client's files. In 2026, 71% of breaches came from third-party vendors. Why? Because small firms blindly trust big names. We all hire these external partners, but we're not really sure what they're doing. Don't assume big brand software is safe just because they're famous. Hackers love big brands because one successful hack gives them the keys to 50,000 accounting firms at once. You are the target because of who your vendors are, and I want you to think about that. Not only do you have to worry about ransomware, phishing attacks, deep fakes, we've now added another layer, making sure that you take that personal responsibility to be responsible for your vendors that you do business with. And that's what this class is about today, helping you through that and navigating it. Let's demystify some of the alphabet soup of security, because that's what I like to call it, right? SOC 2 Type 2 compliance. Think of this as a 6-month video recording of someone working. It proves they actually did the security work. That's what SOC 2 in a layman's terms mean. COI, everybody knows what a COI is, but this is just their insurance card. No card, no entry. If they don't have an insurance card, you don't let them in. You don't do business with them. DPA, most important. These are things that I'm going over that vendors must have and that you must review. This is important because it's the legal pinky swear that they won't sell or lose your data. Very important that you review your contracts, and we're going to talk more about that to make sure that they are aligning with at minimum these 4 things. WISP, this is your firm's internal rule book. Your vendor assessment is a chapter of this book. So when you conduct a vendor assessment, that goes inside your WISP as documental proof that you've done your due diligence. And we talked about that earlier. It's your responsibility as a business owner or a CEO or whatever it is, IT department director, CIO, whatever title you have. It's your responsibility to ensure that these 4 things you have and you can document and understand what your vendors are doing and what they're offering with the data that they have access to. Let's take a look at what auditors look for, right? Again, due diligence. Auditors don't want to hear, I think we're safe. They want to see the receipts that you're safe. Due diligence is a legal term, meaning you did your homework. You validated what you said you were going to do. I'm an auditor for over 30 years. I used to walk into branches and back office audits, and the first thing I would ask for is their process, right? I would watch them in action, and then I would ask for the procedures and show me, tell me. It all became about show me, tell me, and give me these documents. If an auditor sees you have an inventory but no SOC 2 report, they will flag you as an inadequate oversight, which carries fines up to $50,000 per violation. And I don't say that lightly, right? This is about education today and educating yourself. And that's why you're here and you're joining us. And it's very important that you understand the impacts of non-compliance. An auditor wants to see a folder for every vendor. Inside that folder should be the contract, the questionnaire, and the SOC 2 report. If that folder is empty, you have failed. And these are all things, again, very easily steps that you can put into place. So let's talk about locate and recording your inventory. You can't protect what you don't know exists. Don't guess. There are certain ways that you can find all of your vendors and understand who you need to contact to get into compliant and conduct your vendor risk assessment or your third-party overview assessment. Look at your bank statements. Start there. I tell everybody to go through your transactions. If you're paying monthly subscriptions for software charges or SaaS or whatever it might be, right? Those are the people you want to start with. If you're using an MSP provider, someone who's monitoring your systems and says that they have 24-hour monitoring service and BitLocker and VPN and MFA, whatever they're offering you in their service, that MSP is required to give you those reports that we talked about earlier. The SOC 2 report, right? The DPA. So you need to get that from them. You need to ask them, call them up. You say, listen, I'm doing a vendor risk assessment, and under the law, I'm required to have these 5 things. Please send me them. Because that's very important. So the shadow IT, like I like to call it, this is when an employee uses a free app, and this is very critical. So if you're listening, this is important that you understand that. Like a free PDF converter. This isn't just your list. Free apps are often data harvesting traps. You have to map everything. It's very important you understand where your data flows. Follow the money, I always say. If you pay for it, it's a vendor. If it's free and touches clients' data, it's a high-risk vendor. To ensure complete regulatory compliance for IRS and FTC audit, professionals must use these 4 specific identification methods. And this is critical. The first one is the browser and extension audit. Check every employee history and saved extensions. Free browser extensions like grammar checkers, PDF mergers, or currency converters read the text on the screen. If an employee uses a free web-based utility to compress a client's tax return or to a PDF, that client's non-public personal information, now NPI, has just been uploaded to an unverified third-party server. That's very important. So if you take anything away from what I just said, it's very important to understand that. Then we talk about OAuth and app integration. Open in core platforms like your QuickBooks Online, Google Workspace, Microsoft 365. You want to navigate to connected apps or security. Third-party specific access. You want to look for that. Third-party access. Look for software add-ons, reporting utilities, or automated scheduling tools that employees linked via simple sign-on like Google or Microsoft that they can click. These links hand over persistent, what we call API data access tokens. Those can be tracked and give information out of your system. The next, and probably one of the most important, is the email sweep, like I like to call it, the inbox sweep. Search the firm's email or your individual email, or have your employees search their email and archive it for keywords like verify your email, welcome to your new account, or a subscription confirmed, right? Verify your OTP, whatever it might be. This exposes shadow IT platforms that employees have signed up for independently to solve quick tasks without administrative approval. Anything your employee does, whether they're remote workers or not, contract workers or not, you're ultimately responsible for what they're using that can expose that data. And then you want to do the physical and logistical. Identify every non-digital vendor with physical access to environments where paper return or active monitors are live. This includes document shredding service, off-site vendor, storage warehouses, even janitorial services or outsourced IT technicians who plug hardware directly into your local network. There's a plethora of things that you need to look at, and that's where I'm going with this. And it's very important you understand that. So let's talk about the inventory checklist. Who do you have? When we talk about the inventory checklist and what do you have, it's not just your software. It's anyone with a key or a login that may have access to that client's data and that you're responsible for protecting. So when we look at your applications, those are things like that do the math and the taxes and your QuickBooks, your things like that. Anything along that. It could be Drake. It could be anything, right? It could be your Excel. It could be anything, right? Then we look at the cloud. This is where your files sit. Most people get very confused or they don't even know what the cloud is. The cloud is where your information sits outside of your desktop or your servers or your laptop. We all like to save things to files on our laptop. Some people use what they call a VPS or virtual private server. And usually, I'll give you an example of that. It might be like OneDrive. Most people who have Microsoft 365 also have OneDrive, and you'll see it pop up when you're going to search a file. That is a virtual private server that sits on the cloud. You need to understand if that vendor is protecting that information. Then we have the physical, the person who shreds your paperwork or cleans your office at night. Can they see? If the cleaning crew can see your tax returns on your desk, they are a physical vendor and they need to be on your list. So let's talk about classify and assessing risk. I want to keep this dummy down for you, but I've given you kind of a format here that you should use, because one of the jobs not only is to identify all these vendors and document so you can make a list of them and create your separate folders for them so you can get all the documentation required to prove that you've done your due diligence, is also assessing that vendor and whether or not they are in compliance. And that's what this is all about. Treat your high-risk vendors with most scrutiny. Any vendor that stores, transmits, or processes non-public personal information, or NPI, or personally identifiable information like PII, are the ones that you really want to focus on first. This is anybody that includes your social security numbers, bank routing, account numbers, credit card data, dates of birth, or signed tax documents. Example might be tax preparation software, cloud portals, cloud provider, storages, e-signature platforms, document, signers, outsourced bookkeeping subcontractors, anything that touches NPI or PII, right, requires a full questionnaire plus your SOC 2, Type 2 report, your DPA, and a COI. There's 4 things that they're required to have. When we take a look at medium vendors, right, any vendor that interacts with the firm operations, internal corporate communications, or general business data, but does not routinely handle client financial profiles or SSNs or any personal identifier NPI. They touch business emails, but no SSN. They touch internal corporate communications, right? But again, they still are required to have the basic questionnaire and a DPA. So, like Microsoft or Gmail, when you use Outlook, you need to have the basic of questionnaires and a DPA for that vendor. Internal project management tools like Trello, Asana, anything that you use. You can use PowerPoint. I don't know. There's so many of them. You can use SharePoint. You can use anything that tracks like projects or anything like that. Client relationship management tools like your CRM, that you're using to track all your clients, your sales. It could be Salesforce. It could be Go High Level. It could be anything like that contain only business names and phone numbers, and marketing and email newsletter tools, things like that, again, are considered medium. Compliance mandate and conditional validations require signed DPAs and a baseline security declaration ensuring their employees do not have access to back-end records. So that's critical. Then you want to take a look again at the low-hanging fruit, right? Vendors with no access to digital network or restricted physical zones containing sensitive assets. No system access, no sensitive data access. That requires a standard service agreement. You have to have your contract. Examples could be office water delivery. It could be a building. It could be your lease. It could be building utilities, local marketing agencies, running a public-facing website, right? They're running your website. Hardware vendors supplying configured monitors and desks. All of that is considered low, again, unless they have access to your client data. Compliance mandate that you document is log them into an inventory, Tag them as low risk and note that no data exchange occurs. That is what's required. Using the same level of security for your water delivery as your tax software is a waste of time. Focus your energy on the high-risk groups first and work your way down. Make the list. Whatever tool you want to use for that list, use it. So let's talk about the vetting questionnaire, because this is big, right? I've given you some questions here. You have the right to ask questions. The FTC mandates that you take responsible steps to verify security of that vendor. A questionnaire is the first step to do that. If a vendor gives you a vague answer like, "We are secure," then immediately that should be a red flag to you. At cardinalsbite.com, we provide exact questions that force them to give you a yes or no. You can go to my website, you can download the questionnaire, and you can start there and develop your own questions. It's a template. It gives you a baseline. You can also contact us, and we can help you through that as well, right? Data encryption is one of the key questions you want to ask. Do you utilize AES 256 encryptions for data at rest within your hosting environments? And TLS 1.2 or higher for all data in transit. So data at rest means the data when you're not using it sitting there on your website waiting to be accessed. Right? Waiting on your server and your laptop's waiting to be accessed. Data in transit is the information that goes back and forth between these vendors. So that's where you need to make sure both of these things are being protected by that third-party vendor. They must explicitly name cryptographic standards, not just say it's encrypted. In their contract with you or in their SOC 2, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, they have to mention that. They have to show you where it is. So let's talk about identity management. Is multi-factor MFA strictly enforced without exception for all administrative, developer, and support employees' access? Look for exclusions like except for legacy systems or operational for support reps. These are the things you want to look for when you're looking at, again, their DPA, their contract, and their SOC 2 report. Breach notification. This is a massive one, right? What is your formal contractually obligated timeline to notify our firm in writing following a suspected confirmed data security incident or breach? You should reject answers exceeding 72 hours for high-risk data. The IRS requires rapid reporting. We're seeing a lot of breaches through third-party vendors. Hence, this is why they now have federally mandated that you conduct these assessments and you know who your vendors are and what they are complying to. You can't live under the guise anymore that, oh, I thought they handle it. That doesn't mean that's going to obfuscate you from a lawsuit. Just know that. Fourth party risk is what I like to say also. Do you utilize downstream subservice organizations or contractors to process or host our data? Very critical. If yes, do you audit their SOC 2 reports annually? At minimum, they're required to. They must provide an explicit summary of how they manage their own vendor chain. Now, you may say, God, this is a lot. And it is a lot. But it's simpler than you think. You want to send them an email, right? If they say, well, we don't have that, and they tell you, or any one of those questions they answer, they're being very vague, or they're telling you we don't have that, you want to send them a simple email that says, thank you very much for your response, basically. However, under the FTC rule 3.144F and the IRS publication 4557 mandates, our firm is legally required to verify the specific technical controls used to safeguard our data. And then you can go on with anything else. But you need to make sure that you send them an email. And you can even tell them, please provide clear yes or no to the following questions. It helps protect you should something happen, right? Sample compliant templates, again, can be cross-referenced. You can go to Cardinals Bites, my website, and get some of this information and see how to look at this. It's important that you understand the baseline before you approve them as a vendor. And you may have to find another vendor because maybe they don't meet the vetting of this. Maybe you thought they were good and they're not. Trust but verify, that's your job. So let's talk about vetting part 2, which is called the SOC 2 reports, right? Legal requirements. You must obtain a SOC 2 Type 2 report. Let's talk a little bit about what this is. Don't just collect the report. The most important thing about this report is first, read the first 3 pages. On the first 3 pages of a SOC 2 report, what you're going to look for is you're going to go straight to where it states Independent Service Auditor's Report. Typically, it's kind of located within the first 3 pages. It might be a little bit further down than that, but again, it's called the Independent Service Auditor Report. Scroll down to that subsection clearly marked opinion. It'll say opinion. And what you would be looking for is you'll find one of 4 distinct technical conclusions. And I'm going to walk you through what those opinions mean. So SOC 2, again, page 1 to 3 usually. Section Independent Auditor's Report. Look at the opinion paragraph. It'll say either unqualified, which means actually that they passed, which is perfect. And I know it seems odd, but if they're unqualified, that means they passed. If it says qualified, that means there's flaws, specific security control failures that were identified when they got their SOC 2 assessment, right? Because they have to go externally to an auditor to achieve SOC 2 assessment and then get this report to say that I'm SOC 2 compliant or not. So unqualified opinion, the clean bill of health. Let's talk about that. The auditor states that the vendor's controls are fairly presented, suitably designed, and operating with a continuous effective throughout the testing window. This is a passing grade. Qualified opinion, the red flag warning, like I like to say, the auditor notes that the system is generally sound except for specific material failures in certain security areas. And they'll list example, except for operational effectiveness of, access termination controls, where maybe like 14 out of 20 terminated employees retained active server credentials for 30 days past departure. That's a big one, right? And I talk a lot about that. I've done classes about the kill chain, right? The ghost kill chain, I call it. And you can go and look at one of my webinars or go to my website. It's on my website. You can, listen to that for free. But if you see a qualified opinion in access controls or encryption, the vendor is at high risk. And that's bottom line. If you see something that says adverse opinion, immediately disqualification. That's what that means. The auditor concluded that the vendor's security controls are fundamentally flawed, reliable, and failed to meet the baseline trust criteria. This is an immediate regulatory failure. You cannot legally host client MPI on an adverse platform. It's bad. It's bad news. It's as bad as it gets, right? So you don't need to beg an account rep for a SOC 2 report. Let's talk a little bit more about SOC 2s. For the major platforms, your firm relies on daily. The extraction process is entirely a self-service type thing most of the times, right? You can get a lot of these SOC 2 reports through these vendors right on their own website. So let's talk about pulling reports from known vendors. So like Microsoft 365 or Azure, right? You can go to Microsoft Service Trust Portal. So again, you go to Microsoft Service Trust Portal or servicetrust.microsoft.com. You click login in the upper right-hand corner and authenticate using your firm's active, 365 credentials. You're going to navigate to the document or SOC 2 report tab on the main dashboard. You should normally see that, or it might even be under resources, but you're looking for something that says SOC 2. You're going to select the most current Microsoft Cloud Service SOC 2 Type 2 report. Then you're going to download it. The system will prompt you to review and digitally accept Microsoft Standards Non-Disclosure Agreement, which is an NDA. You'll accept that. Click Accept and Download. Save that file directly to your firm's secure compliance archive. And again, I'm not an advocate of saving anything on your desktop. You should create a file in your cloud server, whoever you use, whether it's Google Drive, Microsoft Online Drive, Sync, whoever you're using. I don't know who you're using. And create a file that says Vendor Assessment 2026. And then within that, create a folder that says Microsoft, right? Name it exactly what it is. Microsoft Standard Microsoft Cloud Services SOC 2 Type 2 report. And keep that folder because you're going to put everything else in there that you collect on them. And that is key, right? That is key. So let's talk about like things like Dropbox sign-in, right? You can also do this with Dropbox if you use Dropbox, if you use Sync, if you use other tools like that. Most of them, again, in Dropbox, you'll open a browser and navigate to the Dropbox Trust Center. It's called trust.dropbox.com. You'll click on Request Access or log in using your commercial Dropbox subscription account. You'll locate the asset catalog and filter. And then you're gonna actually, I think they have a search bar and you'll say, locate asset catalog, and then you'll use the filter function that says audited certification, and then you'll see something that says SOC 2 Type 2 report. Click request. If an active NDA is not already tied to your account, a click wrap will, you get a pop-up that's going to say confidential agreement. Again, the NDA will pop up. Click review, accept. You agree, and the platform will unlock and immediately, and an immediate local PDF download, you'll get a download link. Okay, and then you download it in the same process. Create a folder under that vendor to assessment 2026, name Dropbox or again, Sync, whatever you're using, and save it in there because this is the first part of making sure that you're compliant, right? May have like some niche private or desktop highware software platforms that, often do not maintain public-facing automated trust centers. So you're going to have to do a little digging. You can identify your account and sent it. Maybe you have an account executive that's, assigned to you. Maybe you got this service through a representative. Reach out to them and you ask them for this, right? So that's important. Sometimes you have email. You can email their support if they have, support, and put in a ticket through their website saying this is what you're looking for. Those are the ways to get these other vendors that don't have an actual, area within their websites. The larger companies most likely will. The smaller private, like I said, niche, desktop, hybrid type things probably won't. You'll have to email them, chat them, use their API chat if they have one. Right, their chat box, and you want to, make sure that you're requesting a formal request for 2026 SOC 2 Type 2 report. You put your name and you tell them it's a compliance audit need. And again, you can quote the FTC 3.14.4, Section F, that they're required to give it to you. So, vendor oversight checklist. Let's talk about this, right? These are some of the things that you've got to look at, because we talked about that earlier, right? The breach timeline, how fast their SLA, how fast do they report you if they've been breached? Access control, do they allow you to enforce MFA for their software? The critical trap here is complementary user identity controls, or CUECs is what I like to call them. Near the end of the auditor's opening summary, you will find a section titled Complementary User Entity Controls. So that goes back to the SOC 2 Type 2 report. You're going to be looking for something that says user's responsibility. This is very important. This is the vendor shifting accountability back to you onto your desk. The auditor is stating our platform is completely secure, but only if the accounting firm, let's say, configures it correctly on their end. So if you're using a software like QuickBooks or something like that, and you needed to configure it for your system, or you had your IT come up by and they were required to configure to the specs of QuickBooks and they didn't do it correctly and QuickBooks get breached, if they have this CUEC, or again, it's called complementary user entity controls in their SOC 2, and it puts the onus back on you, you could be sued because you weren't compliant with their configuration. It's important to know that. Look for these exact mandates within the CUEC. User entities must enforce complex password parameters and enable multi-factor authentication for a client-side login. So again, a client-side login. You want that. You want their SOC 2 report to say that. User entities are responsible for terminating user access tokens immediately upon employee separation from their firm. Again, these are what the CUECs will actually outline when you look at that paragraph. If the vendor's SOC 2 report states that security depends on you turning on MFA and you have left MFA disabled inside your software account settings, the vendor's passing SOC 2 score becomes completely invalid for your firm's audit trail. Just know that. So if you didn't do and follow those configuration instructions based on what you signed with that vendor, then you're going to be left holding the bag. Simple, short, and sweet. So let's talk about vending Part C, proof of insurance. If a vendor loses your data and goes bankrupt, you inherit their lawsuit. A certificate of insurance is their financial proof of life. Ask for it. Please provide the deck, find out who your broker is, whatever it might be, right? Ask them for a copy of their accord form, right? They can go and find their insurance broker and the issuing on that accord form. And if you have cybersecurity insurance, you may want to go review this as well, right? Do not just accept a PDF document that says insurance. You must analyze the Accord 25 Certificate of Liability Insurance. That is what you're analyzing, right? And what you're analyzing on that form are 3 specific failure points. First, you're looking at cyber liability versus general liability. A standard commercial liability, or CGL policy, covers bodily injury and property damage. If a vendor accidentally drops a server on their foot, the best way to explain it is GCL pays for it. If a hacker steals your client's database from your server, that general liability pays 0. You must look for the special provisions or other section for an explicit line item stating cyber liability, technology errors and omissions, or E&O. That is what you're going to focus on. The coverage floor is $1 million. For any high-risk vendors handling clients' social security, bank information, corporate structures, the minimum data policy limit should be $1 million per occurrence and $2 million aggregate. If their limit is lower, a single medium-sized ransomware event will exhaust their policy coverage before your firm can even reimburse for forensic and client's notification. So the standard ransomware today is about $5 million. You can always negotiate, but you never know if they're going to come back. You want to make sure that you're covered for that, and also your vendors are, right? I always say higher, and you could demand that they cover you higher, right? Make sure, and you look at the policy expiration. Make sure it's not expired. Double check that. If they give you an old COI and your name is not listed on there, don't accept it. Make sure that your name and your company's name is listed. If you do a DBA, it should be your full company name with the DBA, but make sure that it's listed, right? Most firms do not have 50-page WISP documented yet. If you lack an internal standard, your source of truth defaults directly to the strict binary pass-fail requirements of the FTC safeguard rule, just so you know. Because you need to analyze the truth is what I like to call it, to achieve a passing grade that can be filed in your regulatory defense folder. A vendor must score 90 points or higher. So again, you're scrutinizing that vendor. And I always like to keep it simple. Put something in place, keep an separate Excel sheet that lists the vendor on the bottom and what you collected, and that you verified all of these wonderful things that we're pointing out today, and you mark them, right? That they have it. So a vendor must score, again, 90 points or higher, because MFA or SOC 2 Type 2 hold the highest risk profiles of failure in either category drops that maximum possible score to 70 points immediately, instantly triggering an organization fail reject. To prove due diligence to an external auditor, you cannot simply say, this vendor looked safe to me. You must score them using a standard repeatable system. Here is the exact 100-point compliance baseline metric you must apply to every questionnaire response in SOC 2 file. MFA, mandated across all logins, support staff, and databases. If a software company tells you we don't need MFA because our server room is locked, they get a 0 on that section. SOC 2 Type 2, current report less than 12 months old with an unqualified opinion, you have a problem. They fail. Data encryption, verified AES 256 at rest and TLS in transit. Great. They get points for that because they have it. Cyber insurance, active policy on file showing 1 million plus specialized tech coverage, E&O. Great. Aggregated 2 million. Great. Not expired. Great. They pass. Signed DPA, explicit contractually binding data processing agreement in your contract. Great. They passed with the verbiage we talked about earlier. You don't need to sign a piece of paper with a wet ink signature from Elon Musk or Bill Gates. I always like to tell everybody that to comply with the law, right? Think about that. You have to comply. You must capture and freeze their digital contracts, right? So again, this goes back to analyzing what's going on. Major cloud platforms use click wrap agreements, like when you're clicking I agree to this, the terms, the service, the agreements, whatever. When you check that box and you say I agree to the terms of service or the terms of conditions during a login, you are legally signing a contract. Regulators recognize that, but they have to expect you, okay? They have to expect you to have a localized record of what those terms actually said on the day you audited them or signed in, right? You may have this platform for a year, but it's the day that you started that audit at that point, right? You want to document that starting point. So what you can do is you can go ahead and you can log in. So let's say you use, I don't know, Dropbox, right? And I don't know if I'm frozen because my screen is frozen, so I do apologize for that. But let's say you use Dropbox. You can go and log in, and usually on their web page, somewhere along the bottom or under resources or contact us, about us, they'll have their terms and conditions posted or their terms of service. You want to start there. Like on my website at Cardinals Bites, it's on the bottom. They can download the privacy policy, they can download their terms of service, and they can download their terms and conditions. I keep that as open public information because I update it annually, which we're required to do. As things change in the law, we want to make sure that we update it and make sure that you have their most current version. And if it says like 2025, when was it updated? They should have a date of when it was last updated. If you're doing an audit starting today, May 30th, and they didn't update it since January of 2025, you may want to, again, create a support ticket with them. Find an email where you can send and say, can I please have your current terms and conditions, your current terms of service, right? Because that's going to be critical to helping you comply with this audit. And those are just easy ways to get it, right? You can go down and you can look at the data processing, right? So if you don't have a contract, go to the vendor, and you want to also look at data processing addendum, right? You can take a look at things that say that, right? You know, the Dropbox is probably under privacy legal. Microsoft is going to be under their trust center, like I said earlier. But you're looking for a download that says data processing addendum. That's their DPA, or data privacy framework. That is what you're looking for and downloading. Okay. Grab the online fine print, download it, and again, what the most important thing you need to do with something like that, because it doesn't capture electronic signature or time stamping, is you should print it off, stamp it with today's date, and save it into the file. You can print off the very first page, include it with all the other, pages. Right on there, I always say right on there, vendor assessment conducted on May 30th, 2026 by your name. Print it, save it, and have today's date on it, right? And then put it in that 2026 vendor assessment folder under that particular client, right? The critical step, again, is open the PDF and execute the query if you have to. So you can open that PDF and do Control F, and you can look for these 3 mandatory clauses, because that's what you're looking for. There's 3 mandatory clauses that you must make sure that you are protected. And we talked about that earlier, because depending on how that language is written is depending on your legal liability to that vendor should something happen. Sub-processors, you're going to search for that word and confirm they contractually agreed to notify you before changing the downstream companies they handle your data. So if they change their vendors, they need to notify you. Technical and organizational measures. This appendix lists their actual server security specifications. You want to have that. Indemnification. Verify their financial liability limit if their software infrastructure drops offline during peak filing windows. Very important. If an assessment isn't documented inside a formal firm memorandum, then in the eyes of the federal investigator, it never happened. So I tell everybody, even with a WISP, you can have a WISP created. You could create it yourself. You could have had an external vendor create it for you. Whatever it is, if you have not signed it and dated it, the regulators will view it as non-existent, and it never happened. The same with this. When an IRS or FTC agent reviews your firm, they will not sit down and read through a stack of 150 pages, right? Your vendor SOC 2 reports. They're not going to want to do that. They're going to want to see your analytical conclusion. That's what they're concerned about. You must generate a standard, right? A standard text-based single-page memorandum for every high-risk vendor. Keep the same format. I've given you an example here, but you're required to do this. And then again, sign it, date it, put it inside their folder. And then you'll do the same thing annually, right? So clearly state the assessment date, the name of the reviewer, must be a designated security officer or a firm partner. So we talk about designated security officer. That again is in your WISP. Who's your qualified individual that's handling your security? If it's an IT guy, if it's someone that was designated, if it's you as an individual, and maybe it's just one person running the show there and you have no more employees. Again, they have to be a designated security officer or firm partner owner that's signing this. And complete the legal entity name of the vendor platform. Log the precise contract commencement date. So you'll look at your contract when you signed up, your subscription, so on and so forth, and you'll log that. And the subsequent renewal date. So if you have your website on GoDaddy, I don't know, I'm just giving you an example. You want to know when that expires, and you want to put that in there. You want to know when you started their service and when you ended their service, right? So you can pull it for reevaluation at that time. List the exact file names of the documents gathered at supporting proof. So example, we talked about this earlier. Name it exactly as it is. Microsoft SOC 2 2026 Q1, whatever. Drake, DPA version, whatever their version is, version 5, 4, 3, whatever. Name that document that you're saving in their file exactly how it is. And what they look for, again, is the analytical conclusion. You must state in writing that you reviewed the exception section of the vendor's audit documentation and determine their system errors do not compromise your firm's specific network perimeter. That is what this is all about. You are placing your hand down and saying, I have done my due diligence, I am responsible, and this is the steps that I took to protect my company. Cybersecurity, again, is a continuous process. A passing grade in 2025 is completely meaningless for your 2026 compliance track. Doesn't mean anything. The rules, the regulations, everything has changed. A vendor assessment is not a one and done task. This is something that is ongoing. Vendor software architect changes constantly throughout the weekly code deployments, corporate acquisitions, and shifting hosting environments. To maintain continuous regulatory alignment, firms must run a re-vetting cycle every 12 months using these 3 specific tools. Okay, again, every 12 months, or at the time of when that contract or subscription expires. It must be done within a 90-day period. So if today your subscription to Drake is expiring, you have 90 days to do a vendor assessment, even if you did one 6 months ago. Understand the rules, understand the regulations, right? So the sourcing up bridge letter, and this is what it's called. SOC 2 reports are typically issued once a year and cover a specific 6 to 12 month window. January 1st to September 30th. Generally they are. If your review occurs in December, a gap exists. You must request a formal bridge letter, or what we call a gap letter, signed by the vendor executive management, stating that no material changes have occurred in their security infrastructure since the report was published. And again, you may have to email them, you may have to use their support ticket, you may have to chat with them, however you have to do it, right? These especially for smaller companies and those niche platforms that we talked about, the smaller apps, things that you don't know, the shadow IT apps that your employees downloaded, they had no idea. This is very important. The insurance expiry audit, right? I call it the liability insurance policy reset annually. Make sure that you get a new COI annually, right? Audit renewal kill switches. Your annual review must occur 90 days prior to the contract termination, which I just told you, so you have the leverage to walk away if a vendor refuses to provide updated security documentation. And again, going back, right, to documenting. You would document that here. Document the date you contacted them. Document that they're no longer in compliance. Okay? So, it's not a one and done. You got to revet. You might have to get a bridge letter. You might have to get continuous COIs once a year, right? You might have to get a whole new contract that covers you. That's entirely up to you and how you run your business. But it's very important that you understand that. And should you terminate or offboard that vendor, When you cancel a software subscription, your risk profile does not drop to zero. I'm just going to tell you that. The hidden threat is ghost data sitting on an abandoned cloud network somewhere. Many cloud providers state in their fine print when you click cancel subscription, they retain your database backup for 60, 90, or even 180 days in case you decide to return. And I want you to think about that. They are holding on to what we call ghost data that belongs to you and your clients. During that retention window, if your vendor suffers a breach, your client data is compromised and you remain the primary liable party. Check with your attorney if you don't have one. Validate what I'm telling you. So, I'm going to provide you the 3-step requirement to offboard, right? And these are things that you should put again. If you haven't developed a policy or a procedure around how you're going to vet these vendors or third-party vendors, you should write everything out that I gave you today and say, this is how my company is going to do this. We're going to identify, right, browser, email. We're going to identify all subscriptions, physical, logistical, whatever it might be, cloud. And you're going to walk yourself and you're going to write this out, that these are your steps that you do and you take internally. And you'll have to review that once a year and make changes where necessary. But this should also be included in there, right? Before initiating an automatic account deletion, run a master backup and confirm that all client files and PDFs and metadata records have been downloaded to your localized or primary secure server. Before you cancel a subscription, make sure that you have this. Verify the integrity of the zip files before cutting the cloud link. I'm just telling you that. It's best practice. Save them, do your backup, make sure that you have access to that data. Demand from them, right? Demand for a certificate of destruction from that vendor. Again, email them, go online, submit a ticket, however you need to get this. Send a formal electronic request to that vendor's compliance team demanding a timestamp certificate of data destruction. It's a formal document where their tech team swears under penalty or contract law that they have wiped your data off their hard drives forever. Do it. You should be even doing this when you offboard a remote employee or an employee who has used their own device to work for you and they have contact or they have MPI or PII. Something that I train my clients on all the time. If you have remote workers or contract workers and they're using their own device, you are required to go wipe that data off their device and have them provide you with a certificate of data destruction, swearing they have wiped all of your clients' data off their system and there's nothing left. They may even have to go hire somebody to do it. That's not your problem. So, let's talk about do not leave this training session and scatter your compliance documents across random desktop folders, because that's the worst thing you can ever do. First of all, your desktop is not as secure as something like a virtual private server, or like we talked about, Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive, Sync, whoever you want to use. They're a little bit more secure because they are vetted with the hardening of what we call the hardening of their systems, more so than your regular computer or desktop will be against a cyber attack. They're a lot more safer, right? And that's why you use them. But again, you want to build, wherever you keep this data, a structure. And I'm giving you an example here, right? What it should look like. Master vendor inventory list. Timestamps tracked. When do you start this list? Who's on that list? Do different tabs. However you have to do it. Structure your proof. If an IRS or FTC investigator steps into your office, they will test your compliance framework instantly by saying, show me your security tracking for your cloud portal. And wouldn't it be nice to just say, hold on a minute, I got that for you. You click on Vendor Assessments 2026. You show them how you have all of your inventory for your vendors tracked. You go right to that cloud tab. You have a list of all your vendors. You have the date that you started your vendor assessment, the date and time that you started, who conducted it. And then you go into the individual folder and you show them your evidence. That is what an auditor looks for. And they will appreciate that, believe me. When an auditor sees that you have some type of structure and you're not just winging it, it makes them feel more confident and more lenient, if you would, that, okay, they got some type of structure here. That's great. Let's see how deep the structure goes. Where's the holes, right? Because we're looking for holes. That's what we do as auditors. We're trained. But they want these specific things, right? Your SOC 2, evidence, right? They want evidence of your questionnaire. They want the memo. They want the active certificate, right? They want everything. If you terminate it, they want all these things. And that's, again, up to you. So create a file for each vendor separately with all the proof points. Anybody have any questions? So I'm going to stop today if you have no questions. But let me see if there's any questions in the chat. So I am a small-time CPA. I only have me and myself. Am I still required to do this? Under the FTC new safeguard rules, you're considered a financial institution, and the answer is yes. It doesn't matter if you're one person or 50,000 employees. The IRS is going to do the same type of audit on you that they would a larger organization. Unfortunately, you're held to the same standards. So it's a great question, and unfortunately, I have to deliver that news to you because it is what it is, right? Let me look at some other questions because I think some of these have already been answered as we've gone through this. The SOC 2 Type 2 report, how do you get that? Well, the SOC 2 Type 2 report requires a lot of different elements. It requires you hiring somebody to come in and audit your entire system. So if you have like a particular software application that you're selling, even your website, right? You can have that done to validate, especially if you're accepting payments on that website, because I see a lot of problems with small business owners accepting payments through their website and they're not compliant. We audit that. So my company audits that when we go in and we come and do your risk and compliance assessment. And we give you that feedback on the things that you need to take to fix that, or go back to whoever set that website up for you to make sure that you're compliant and your client's data that they're entering in cannot be taken and have appropriate safeguards in place. So another great question. Okay, so we're going to hard stop now. We're going to conclude today's training. Next, I'm going to be discussing how I can help you. We offer a full-service cybersecurity compliance as well as our new GRC intelligent platform. Right, so welcome to our live demo. We're going to help you get audit ready. So if you're worried about doing all of these things and you need to comply with your vendor risks, or if you need to get a WISP, or you need to have an IRP plan, or you need policy and procedures, or you need employee training, if you're interested in learning more about our services, you can book a complimentary 15-minute Cyber Shield review to discuss your needs, right? It's a question, it's a conversation. We can help you pinpoint and gap immediately the things that you need help with. And we can give you resources, point you in the direction if you financially are unable or don't know how to start those things, or you kind of semi-started things, but you want us to look at them. we can give you a gap analysis and take a look at that, right? We're offering a 50% promotion discount for CPA Academy attendees or anybody who attends this training today. So if you have attended this training, you want to DM me in LinkedIn or on YouTube or on Facebook, and you want to say 50%. And I will go ahead and we'll kind of talk to you. We'll set up that 15-minute. Again, it's complimentary. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a conversation. We'll have you do a 15-minute risk assessment with us, and we can identify the gaps and where we can help. You know, again, some of the things that we get you compliant to is the ISO 2700 NIST compliant, the FTC safeguard rules, the IRS 4457, and we also help you make sure that, again, you're not perjuring yourself. We teach you what you need and give you the tools and the resources, and also we can service you directly if you need us. And we do it at affordable prices. Some of our subscriptions start as little as $99 a month to get full compliance. So I want you to think about that, right? Is it worth it to you to have full compliance? And if it is, contact me today. Okay? I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I appreciate it. I hope that you enjoyed this training. And if you did, go ahead, like, and share. Have a great day, everyone.